Hi, I'm Charlie. I'm one of the partners of Seedstars and have really been with the company since the founding back in 2013. My role is to manage the early stage venture capital fund that we call Seedstars International Ventures, where we back early stage, pre-seed and seed stage tech companies all across the globe, from Latin America, Africa to Asia. Seedstars was founded, like I said, back in 2013 with the goal and the mission of having an impact in emerging markets through entrepreneurship and technology. So we had seen the success in the more developed market tech ecosystems, in the US or in the UK or in Europe. And we really wanted to bring a lot of the learnings and the best practice and that energy to more emerging markets. And so we founded Seedstars with the goal of leveraging those two tools, entrepreneurship and technology, for building a better society and providing more opportunities and economic growth in these markets. Seedstars International Ventures is the early stage, so pre-seed and seed stage fund that we first launched back in 2017. And we've just launched the second fund in June of 2022. And this fund is globally diversified. When I say global, everything is emerging market. So we're really focused on mid-income and to some extent low-income countries, and not in the high-income countries. So whether that is, a Mexico or a Colombia or Nigeria, Kenya, Pakistan, India, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, those are the kind of markets that we're focused on, where they are all at different stages of development, but the challenges that they face within this sort of next time frame where we're deploying capital, so over the next 5 years, they're very similar. Some of them will be leading, some of them will be following in terms of the technology and the availability of some of the products and services of the tech companies that we back. But by and large, there's similar trends that can be spotted and then also backed and invested in these different markets. So Seedstars International Ventures, the first fund we launched was 2017. We backed 80 companies and are now deploying from the second fund, where we've just made our first 10 investments and are aiming to write actually to 100 investments to 100 companies in the next 3 years. So we've got a good way to go, 90 more companies in the next 3 years. So the emerging market startup ecosystem has definitely been through a boom. I mean, like all VC ecosystems globally. Just to put it in perspective, when we started investing in 2017, there was only about 500 recorded venture capital backed investments made a year in all of our markets. So in all of the emerging markets, maybe 500 companies received funding. That was over 2,000 in 2021 and will continue to grow in 2022. So you had about a 50% annual growth rate in the number of VC backed companies. So there's still a lot of room. There's still a lot of room for growth. The markets are still very immature versus what you'll find in a Berlin, a London, a Silicon Valley, and New York, and places like that. But it's really going through an incredible change, and the success stories that have been that have been created over the last few years, the very successful companies, you're starting to see a lot of entrepreneurs spin off, start their own thing, and that is creating again this sort of catalytic effect where you just see more and more high quality founders, which is what is needed. I mean, competition is good, and that is required for some companies to then really deliver the best in class services and scale up to the sort of types of returns and exits that VC requires. So we don't back teams in developed markets, but I think the lens through which we observe and then judge teams, and also companies for that matter, is exactly the same. We need obviously a high quality team at the stage we're investing. As everyone says, it is often a bet on the team to some degree. There needs to be the tech to back it up. There needs to be that traction and the ability to generate traction. you need the market and the market size to be considerable. There's, I think, a way of looking at investments that is not necessarily going to change emerging versus developing markets. We first look at the sort of leadership ability, leadership potential, which is mainly demonstrated either through historical track record and positions that the founders have held, but then also just in our due diligence process, it's our own judgment around what is that leadership potential. Second thing that we look at is their network ability. So the network is multifaceted. It's the network of talent. So can they bring together a high quality team? There's the network of investors. Do they have a network of angels, VCs? And then the network at large, whether that's to corporates or whoever, press, media, whatever might be relevant for them. So that's the next factor we look at. And then we like to look at industry experience. So we like to see that there's some kind of experience that they're bringing with them that will accelerate their development. And that can be, in the sector, if they're working in the banking sector, maybe they've been in that sector or they've seen things from the inside out. They don't have to learn it from the ground up. So that also is an important factor for us. And the final thing that we judge is their growth experience. So have they worked in or led a company through a phase of high growth? 20% month-on-month growth. And so, we don't necessarily have to have all of those things for every founder, but that would be our kind of 20 out of 20 score, as it were, for the founders as we judge them. So the trends that we're seeing in emerging markets are largely following what we've seen in developed markets in terms of the volumes of venture-backed or private capital flows into the markets. I think the slowdown is important, and it's a sizable slowdown. Whether that's 20-30% we'll see for this quarter, but it's definitely significant. It's different by region. So Africa was kind of bucking the trend, and so the first half of 2022, Africa was still seeing growth in volumes of venture capital funding. Southeast Asia was down about 4%, LATAM about 15%. So, it varies, and each region is, I guess, seeing its own trend. I think what's most important for us to bear in mind, though, is like in developed markets, the emerging markets have just seen an abundance of capital raised by funds in the last few years. So the capital is there. People are just being much more reserved and, I guess, conservative in their approach to deploying capital right now, which I think is a good thing. There's been this period where funding was being deployed at any valuation and with all types of companies and stages without really having anything concrete behind it. And I think this is a positive correction. And for the funds, like ours, that are just starting to deploy in terms of our second fund, the timing is fantastic. Is this a sort of dry spell for the long term? We know that the dry powder is there. We know that the funds have raised, ourselves included, and so that funding has got to come out somewhere. So it's going to come over the next few years, but that people and the capital allocators are being more conservative, I think is a positive thing right now. We are also seeing, I think, similar trends on the valuation front. So I think valuations at later stages have been shown to be declining much more rapidly than the earlier stage. We are still seeing some noticeable corrections. So valuations maybe dropping 20% versus what they were a year ago. So, there's some significant correction, which again is a positive thing when you're writing early stage seed and pre-seed tickets like ourselves. So I think in general, everything is growing, but there's a couple of sectors where we're seeing the most interest and the most attention right now. Fintech represents the largest portion of deals and capital flow, and that's the same within our portfolio. It's our primary focus is fintech and what we call future of finance. And for us, that represents maybe 40% of the portfolio right now. And I think that's representative of what we're seeing across the market. So when I look at our pipeline statistics, fintech or financial services is 30 to 40% of the deals that we receive. So it's by a long way the largest sector of interest, both for founders and VCs. Beyond that, I would say there were a lot of different themes kind of jostling for the next position. We categorize another sort of vertical as future of commerce, which is everything related to the flow of products and services through an economy. So, it could be the flow of FMCG goods or pharmaceuticals or construction materials. And if you think of Alibaba and the sort of B2B commerce platforms, that is a sector, and it's not just that one model, there's a whole bunch of things that go around it. So the logistics, the supply chain part of it as well, financing, which is embedded in that whole supply chain as well. So that for us is maybe not a common way of packaging it, but we call it future of commerce. And that for us represents about another 40% of the deals that we do. So those are probably the two most prevalent sectors in emerging markets right now. And then, there's a whole bunch of others, future of health, future of education and work. I think what probably differs to developed markets here is you don't necessarily see pure play AI, cybersecurity, things like that, which are obviously pretty popular sectors in developed markets. On the Web3 front, I think we are seeing quite a lot in emerging markets. It's not an area of focus for us right now, but it is a trend that is also, either followed or in some cases led what's going on in developed markets. So we source companies in a number of ways, and a big factor to our success is the community that we've been building since 2013. So for almost 10 years, we've been in these markets, running events, running programs, getting to know the ecosystem. And that is a huge element to the success of our ability to source great quality companies. There is also our team, within each fund, there's a team dedicated to the markets that we invest. And so we have teams on the ground in each of the different regions in the core markets whose main job is just being in those markets, talking to the different communities and making sure that entrepreneurs, when they go to launch their business, we are top of mind. And that can be, relationship building with accelerators or with universities or with other venture capital funds. It's kind of a never-ending role of just making sure your name is really out there. And so we don't have a lack of deal flow, but it's definitely critical to any fund. If you're top of the funnel, if the deals that you're accessing are not good quality, you can't expect the bottom of the funnel, so the ones that succeed, to be any good. Anyone who's listening who's taken the plunge to be a founder and an entrepreneur, first of all, congrats. It's not an easy choice. It's a tough road, but I think it's an extremely rewarding road. I've traveled it myself, first as a sort of solo entrepreneur, but then also as one of the sort of founding partners of Seedstars, where we ourselves have been building a company for the last nearly 10 years and have been through many of the ups and downs and the challenges of building a company. So I know what you're going through, but I think it does allow you to learn an exceedingly incredible amount of things. And being a founder, you're just involved in so many different facets of the business. You cannot do anything but learn. So I think in terms of accelerating your learning and your growth, it's an incredible step. Obviously not everyone is going to find the success and the product market fit and the growth that they were hoping for, but that is unfortunately part of the business and the reality of innovation and challenging the status quo. So I think it's a great time to be a founder. I know the markets and the sentiment is maybe not as positive as people would like right now, But as I said before, there is dry powder, so there is capital sitting within funds ready to back entrepreneurs. So if you have the right idea, the right execution, there's no reason that someone is not going to back you in the next couple of years, even if we're heading towards a global macroeconomic downturn. So I think the elements are still stacked in the favor of entrepreneurs right now.